Serious, what ruined your innocence? Farting blood and parents thinking I was A or Ed, then learning what ARE was and having to convince them I was not. And learning it was just from bad fishers from wiping too hard. Wow, I'm sorry. I hope you have the appropriate technique and softer tissues for future wipes. Actually, it's still a problem I have. I have delicate A skin. Me too. Sucks A. Figuratively. You were bleeding from the anus and your parents went straight to traumatic penetration? They didn't roll through diseases first? I've since asked, and I guess based off looking at my eye, there were visible tears and I had bruises on my eye and back too. But that's just from being clumsy. I think I probably was also defensive over my uncle who my mom didn't really trust, and who they accused. Being huddled under my bed late at night as a young child while hearing my parents scream and beat each other in arguments over bills, loans, and all the consequences of their stupid decisions. I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope you're in a better place now. I come from an abusive family where my dad didn't just beat up on my mom, but also us kids. Years of therapy and learning to love myself have come a long way, but I'll never forget those nights. Thank you. Therapy has helped me greatly. I hope you continue your journey as well. Finding love helped me greatly. I am a father now and can't even imagine laying my hands on this tiny child. Thinking about it makes me cry. How can a grown-up man do that and live with himself? Same here. My dad was so verbally and emotionally abusive that my mom snapped. We're thankful her actions failed because. Anywho, I was 7. I swore I would never, ever get married. Then I met the sweetest, most gentle man who brought a very skittish, wounded, snarly puppy, me, back to life, and we've been together 18 years. This just made my day. Thank you. Asking too many questions too early in life and having an honest mother. Edit, to be fair to my mother, had she been less honest, I would have found a way to get my answers. Anyway. A blessing and a curse for sure. My grandmother was like this. That's how I feel about my older sister. She was precocious and had a lot of questions. Whenever she found out something interesting, she made sure I was fully informed. That is how, I assume, some of us found out how self-replication in Homo sapiens is enabled and initiated. Same. I asked my mother what is S when I was 8 yo. She answered me like I was one of her students, she's a teacher, and gave me a speech about reproductive system and STDs. All I had to say was yuck. My mom left a puberty book on my dresser before I woke up one morning, and that was the entirety of her education for me on the topic. The day my own father called me effing stupid, asked if I needed meds, and then my mom came to defend me, which resulted in her being slammed to the floor. I remember going to the garage and getting his metal rake while my 2 sisters and brother cowered in the corner. My dad was always verbally and emotionally abusive, but that was the one, and only, time he ever laid hands on anyone. I walked back in the door screaming with tears in my eyes, wielding a giant metal rake I could hardly carry. I remember it was the first time I ever felt a cuss word just roll off my tongue. I will effing K you if you touch mom one more time. Realistically, I was 11 and couldn't do SH, but his demeanor changed. My sisters and mom came to hold me back. I remember the look in my dad's eyes. It was a mixture of the F are you going to do slowly followed by OSHIF ed up. He just walked out the door, got in his car, and went to work. Just, like, that. As all his kids were screaming and tissed around their mother, and his reaction was to run instead of stick around and resolve things. That's the day I vowed to never be a father like him. Now I got 3 happy kids, one of whom is a year from college, whom I vow to raise with nothing but love, respect, and understanding. Edit, the replies of people experiencing somewhat of the same thing makes me sad, but it also makes me happy knowing I'm not alone. I hope each and every one of you has found a better life path that has led to happiness and the break of a bad cycle. Much love to all of you. Also, I'm good now. Life is much better, and my dad, well, he probably will die alone for his behavior. But reap what you sow. I'm so sorry that happened. Thanks for sharing, and good on you for doing things differently. Thank you. But it's been over 2 decades, so I have learned to move on and live better. My dad was also verbally, physically and emotionally abusive. I am very sorry you had to grow up in an environment like that. I'm proud of you for not being like him. I know it's hard. I'm sorry you went through it too. I hope your life is happy, fulfilling, and stable. My deployment to Afghanistan. Vietnam for me, 17 years old. As the son of a wounded Vietnam vet, lost his legs to a landmine, who dropped out of 11th grade to volunteer, I feel like not only did he lose his innocence, but in a way it also affected his future family. He was a great father, but you just don't go through that unscathed. No one is unscathed from that war or any. But kids of VN vets, and I'm sure all vets, get a very bad parenting experience. Nothing changes your perspective on humanity as much as seeing just what people are really capable of doing to each other, even ones ostensibly on their side. Unsupervised access to the internet from a very young age. It honestly amazes me the amount of parents out there giving young children smartphones with unfiltered access to the internet. I had a friend whose 11-year-old was watching P and he just kinda shrugged it off like boys will be boys. Or you could be a responsible parent and limit it? Yeah, 45 minutes of P a day should be plenty for an 11-year-old. Yep, same here. Little me was like 12 or so. I was browsing files on the family computer and in the music folder was one titled Bambi. It was not related at all to the cute classic movie with the deer. So what was it, sir? Lady getting deep-throated. I still remember my burning face and rapidly elevated heart rate as I rapidly closed the video. I ended up opening it again later. Set off stuff that really should have waited for me. Sounds like me when a friend introduced me to Rotten. Com. Whoa, this is too close to mine. So when I was 12, my dad brought home some office computers that this company was giving away that he was doing some handyman work for. Well, I ended up getting one of them. Apparently they never wiped the drive because I definitely found some picture files named Bambi. Well, I clicked on it and found some very graphic pictures. I kept them for years until the drive died. Lowell. Being Harris-er? Ed in first grade by an older kid. Then having to testify in court. Had to go to mandated therapy and counseling afterward. Became an outcast at school. I went from being a confident and vibrant child to the withdrawn and quiet person I am today. I hope you don't mind me asking, and only answer if you want obviously, but how did it happen? Inside the school? Outside? In the bathroom? In recess? Were there no teachers around? I'm asking because I worry about something like this happening to my future children. All good. Happy to answer questions. It happened at an after-school daycare. In the backyard inside of a little playhouse. The kid was my mom's friend's son. Tie for your answer. Do you think there was a way to avoid this happening? So sorry you had to go through that. Probably my Annie being murdered in her front lawn by a jealous ex. I wasn't a witness. Attended the funeral though and was not prepared for that amount of grief. I wasn't traumatized towards funerals, but absolutely lost innocence. I was about 5 or 6. Darn, sorry for your loss. Hope they locked up him for life. I lost my grandfather at 6, but we weren't that close so it felt more like a lost opportunity to me than a lost experience person. Hearing on the news that my surf life-saving coach just got 30 years in jail for being a P. Never touched my brother and I, but I kept asking questions to my mother until I found out what it all meant. Oh my. My Taekwondo instructor was arrested for Harris-ing a 12-year-old pupil. This guy was revered with the utmost respect by anyone who knew him, including me. To say I was shocked was an understatement. If you asked me, yo, rank everyone I knew by their ability to do such a thing, super weird hypothetical I know, he would be at the very bottom. My siblings and I did some martial arts when we were youngsters, probably up to when I was 12 or 13, and then all of a sudden we stopped going and for a while we did not know why. My mom later sort of explained to us that the instructor had been getting handsy with some of the underage female pupils. They were probably 1,516 years old, but I don't think I really understood what that meant until several years later. It's martial arts. Mom, there's a lot of getting handsy. That's absolutely terrifying. I'm glad you and your brother were safe. There truly are some horrible people out there. I'm glad this person got caught. Being homeless at 14, but honestly probably way before that. Grew up quicker than a child should have too. Are you safe now? I guess you are very mature and wise as a person. I learned that those who go through hard things are the sunshine of our society. Yes, thanks for asking. I'm currently 23, in a 4-week program to get my Class A CDL. Took me a few years to get out the streets and a lot of inner work to remove the dislike from my heart that I had for my family and the world and myself and for God. Had to make a lot of changes in my way of thinking and take accountability and then face the guilt I burdened myself with by the poor choices I felt I had to make to survive. Around 14 years old I smoked a lot of W and played video games like normal kids do, at least where I'm from. But my mom became super religious around that time and turned her life to God, which was new to me because I didn't grow up like that. Was never a bad kid until I was kicked out and forced to survive around DS and violence. I feel as though I seen it all in the streets, but I know people that had it worse than me, so I just try to stay grateful for every little thing and that I made it out that mindset and environment before it was too late. I'm not happy. My past still haunts me. But I won't break and I won't stop moving forward. Hi bro, may I give my 2 cents worth? I'm a fairly religious person myself, Christian. But I have been by religious people too. People who justify their wrongdoings in the name of God are not acting in the name of God, unless they are actually schizophrenic. A lot of them, to me, just want to have an excuse to do things they would not normally do. A twisted desire to mold the world around them using some higher power as an excuse. That's not religion. That's moral escapism. I disliked the church, both Christian and Catholic, until I realized that, to be fair to them, it's not their fault some demented assholes are using them as a reason to try and destroy me. Perhaps they may even have done things like this to deflect blame to the institutions rather than themselves. I hope you're doing fine now. It's been 9 years since I was rescued, but I'm struggling with lots of things. It's frustrating how slow progress is, especially after comparing yourself to normal people or even fellow survivors. However, please never give up. Even though I recovered much slower than others, I always had the unshakable feeling that everything will be okay someday. Same here. Homeless and alone at 14. The shit you see and things you have to do to get by straddled me with a lot of guilt and self-loathing. It makes you grow up in a hurry, that's for sure. I'm 38 now, 3 kids and doing pretty well financially. Still deal with it occasionally, particularly with overcompensating with the kids to give them everything I missed out on. I'm glad to hear you survived it too. It's a massive achievement that I hope you are proud of yourself for pulling through it. What famous person had everything going for him but managed to F it all up? Matt Lauer. This guy was NBC royalty. Hosting the Olympics. He was there on 911. He was a fixture of the network. Then his perverta secrets got out and he just effing vanished. It's almost as if locking women in your office with a secret button under the desk was a bad idea. Man, F Matt Lauer, honestly. I couldn't stand him even before the scandal. To be fair, the button was kind of just a way to sensationalize the story. It didn't lock from the inside. But the media really wanted us to think that he had a button custom installed specifically to trap women in there with him. In reality, it was a pretty common feature in high-profile offices at the time. I think the bigger problem was, well, you know, the anal raping. But that's just my point of view. I met some people who worked at NBC when this all happened and they said the same thing. Most offices above a certain level had that feature. It's my time to shine. I love when people with specific usernames find these. Subway Jared. All Jared had to do was eat subs and not F kids. That's it. Endless subs. And he just couldn't help himself. And walk 2 miles a day, which is not a lot of walking. Well, yeah. But he also had AIDS, which helped. He just wanted to get into some smaller pants. Started his career with a mild cholesterol problem. Ended his career because a child harasser? Old problem. Most recently, Kevin Porter Jr., NBA player for the Houston Rockets. He just signed a 4-year, $80 million deal and got arrested for assaulting his GF. Julio Urias on the Dodgers too. Lost it all for doing the same thing. Might as well as child harasser? Wander Franco to the list too. After all said is done, he won't be playing in MLB ever again. Wander couldn't get out of the minors. And in that deal, because of his prior behavior, they can pretty much drop him at any time without having to pay the rest of his contract, which is a 11 type of contract of that size in the NBA. They really said F around and find out, and he F-ed around big time. What other stuff has he done in the past? Allison Mack. Her character in Smallville was original to the show and not part of the Superman mythos. She did so well by it that they introduced it in the comics. But she had to go corn a cult that trafficked women and branded them like animals. End of career. No reunion shows. No Comic Cons. Character dropped from the comics, so no cool legacy. Oh yeah. And jail. She's out of jail now. Though, I'm sure no one's gonna be hiring her again anytime soon. She'll star in movies that you'll find on discount at the gas station. There's gotta be a subtype of horror movies where they hire on actors who no one likes, then K their character in a gruesome way, because I think people would watch those movies just to see that. Then she tried to take a bunch of women's studies classes at Berkeley while I was there and everyone was like, oh, F no. Jennifer Grey is always my go-to for self-inflicted career king. After she starred in Dirty Dancing and became a big name, she decided to get a nose job to make herself look better. What happened was no one recognized her anymore, and her career became limited to minor roles in TV and braided movies. There was nothing wrong with her nose in the first place. Reminds me of my aunt. Growing up, her older brother teased her mercilessly about her big nose. Eventually she had enough money to get a nose job. It was basically her life savings. The first thing her brother said was, "Why did you waste money on that? There was nothing wrong with your nose." There's a huge culture in Staten Island and Long Island and New York City where you get a rhinoplasty for your birthday when you're like 16. Bit of an oddball answer, but Andrew Cuomo. He was an ADA lawyer, founded a law firm, was a secretary under Clinton, AG, and then became NY governor. He was probably one step away from being the next DNC candidate for president. Then, as y'all probably all already know, several women came forward and told their story. Him and Anthony Weiner had the chops to be big national political stars. Add Elliot Spitzer to that list. Dude was nicknamed the Sheriff of Wall Street for his crackdown on corruption and was a huge star. Won the New York governorship with the largest margin in state history. Then he had to go and get caught with several prostitutes. If that didn't happen, Spitzer could very well have been the 2008 Democratic nominee for president instead of Obama and won the general election. Let's throw John Edwards on that one. He was a senator, a rising star in the DNC, handsome, a vice presidential candidate, and a well-known attorney focusing on working with individuals suing corporations. His most famous case was suing a pool that didn't properly cover a suction thing that ended up removing a little girl's intestines as a result. He had 4 beautiful children and an extremely popular wife who was tragically diagnosed with breast cancer. And then he got caught with his mistress and their child in a hotel while his wife was dying of terminal cancer. He was able to go back to practicing law, but he's never had a political career again. Cuomo's been a dirtbag for a long time. Everyone in NY was not surprised when he finally got his comeuppance. John Wilkes Booth. He was a famous and highly regarded actor with a very successful career before he murdered President Lincoln. 26 years old, considered the handsomest man in America and making the equivalent of over $370 a year in today's money. I never knew that about him. I thought he was just some run-of-the-mill $1 one. That's like Timothy Chalamet assassinating Biden. WTF. Apparently, while he was a star, his brother had more media presence. So it was like Liam Hemsworth murdering the president, and getting disowned by Chris Hemsworth, who was trying to save his career. Kind of screwed over his whole family too. They were all very accomplished actors. His older brother Edwin was considered the preeminent American actor of his time, with many historians of the theater considering him the greatest American actor to have ever lived. Now pretty much nobody knows anything about the family besides what his brother did. In regards to Edwin, some theatrical historians consider him the greatest American actor, and the greatest Prince Hamlet, of the 19th century. Not to mention the fact he saved Lincoln's son, Robert, from slipping underneath a moving train. Mickey Rourke was pretty much the next James Dean of the 80s, just hit after hit. Women loved him, guys wanted to be him. Then he decided to try boxing and his face got pulverized. Bad plastic surgery followed, and he had issues with the press. The wrestler was amazing, but the big comeback sort of fizzed out after that. Seems like a cool and interesting guy, but he could have been royalty if not for a couple of bad decisions. Till Mickey Rourke used to be attractive. He was a really handsome guy. Wow, crazy what years of chugging vodka and hating Tony Stark can do to a man. He's still working steady. IMDb shows 10 upcoming credits, 2 passed in 2023, 4 in 2022, and so on. He's aged a bit into the bad plastic surgery. Amazing to think about how beautiful he was back in the day. But now he's just regular old man ugly. He is not regular old man ugly, he's like a wax statue now. Here is in 2023 on set of The Palace, directed by Roman Polanski. Ellen DeGeneres. Be kind to one another unless you work for me. Then all bets are off. Ellen DeGeneres is the epitome of rights for me but not for you. When I hear the term champagne liberal, she's the exact type of wealthy white liberal woman I think of. She surrounded herself with yes people and no one was willing to tell her what was mean and what was funny. MC Hammer. To this day, he's still used as a warning to up-and-coming music artists. What happened? I'm out of the loop on this one. He had a big posse and bad financial management. He should have gotten someone legit to touch his stuff. I saw how some of his money was wasted. Super Bowl 30, I watched him walk in with at least 10 bodyguards. All had tickets I assume he paid for. It looked like a hip-hop version of the Secret Service escorting the president after someone yelled gun. Huddled, eyes scanning the crowd and tiny little MC Hammer, the planet they were closely orbiting around. He would sit. They'd fade to seats near him but not next to him. Then when he'd get up it was if they all spawned in around him. When he was on Oprah and she mentioned him going broke, he did have a cool thing to say. Paraphrasing, just to be clear, people don't need to feel bad for me. I had tens of millions. Now I don't have tens of millions broke. Not we should worry about MC Hammer broke. I'm doing okay, and there are other people out there who need real help and concern. It genuinely came off well. Not like I don't need your pity. I'm sure he was quoted as saying, if you get the choice between rich and famous, choose famous. Just last week, Michigan State football coach had a guaranteed contract with about $80 million left on it. He was quite clearly not performing at a level that justified his contract. But after one good season the school was desperate to keep him on board. Literally the only way out of the contract was if he got fired for cause, which pretty much means breaking the law, breaking school policy, or breaking major league rules. He was reported having what was allegedly non-consensual phone-s with the woman they hired to lecture their players on sexual assault and proper consent because she was once gang ed and uses her story as a cautionary tale. He is suspended pending the conclusion of the investigation, at which point he will almost certainly be fired for cause. The last person you should be solely harassing is the sexual harassment trainer. I would never have thought there was a sexual harassment hierarchy. But you are correct. Consider your training complete. I'm a little surprised Mel Tucker wasn't a little more prominent in this thread. Given the timing of the thread, it almost felt inspired by him. Lowell. Also, username relevant, for Mel Tucker. Robert Downey Jr. And then, he started all over. I admire him. There's an old Simpsons reference that doesn't make sense to most people now. The Simpsons are driving through Hollywood and someone points out something, hey look, Therese Robert Downey Jr. having a shootout with the cops. I don't see any cameras. I'm checking 5 He's checking 5 fine. That's just my aspirin. And now that song is in my head. I would say he's much better known these days for how triumphantly he came back than for how badly he screwed up. His is an inspiring story for anyone struggling with addiction. It helps to be talented, charismatic and good looking. Of course. I will go see any movie he is in.